So the big move to New York, that happened a little bit before the big move, however, because the thing was, after finding out all the success that happened for my showcase, I knew I had to move to New York. The problem was how and where and when. Toward the end of the year, and that year was 2013, I started to experience pain again. And it came out of nowhere because, again, I was back on track. I was physically where I needed to be. But then when I started to feel this pain again, slowly I noticed I was losing a bit of weight. And so my dad, he said to me, you know, I do this stomach cleanse every so often. And so I said, you know what, Dad, let me do this stomach cleanse. I do this cleanse, and I'm telling you, it has to be one of those cleanses that celebrities do when they're trying to lose weight or look like they're like snatched, as people say. But anyway, so I was what they would say snatched after doing the cleanse. The cleanse was terrible. Like, I was shaking and everything through it. It was very painful. And all it did was just sculpt me. But I still inside was feeling this pain. So on the outside, I looked like, oh my God, look at her. She looks like a model. She looks gorgeous. This is what people were saying to me. But inside, I'm like, yo, what is going on? I feel terrible inside. So then suddenly the opportunity to move to New York came about. And the opportunity was through my cousin's mom, who I was able to move into her apartment. So that happened in January of 2014. So I moved, and as I moved, that pain became even worse. It was almost as if my body knew that I was in a rigorous environment. Because the thing about New York is a rigorous environment. You have to walk everywhere. Physically, you're enduring a lot. So that made circumstances even worse. Did go on to meeting with the agencies and the casting directors and things of that nature. And some of them were like, okay, great, let's get you onto this callback. Let's get you onto that. And some of them were actually like, you know, we've kind of moved on, because the thing about that world and that industry is that if you don't jump onto those opportunities right away, then they're bound to move on to someone else. Mind you, this is going on and I'm still in pain. Even my job opportunity, because that was the next thing. I was able to get a job opportunity teaching in public schools theater as a co-teacher. And the thing with that was, I did not want to expose anything that I was going through, because I didn't want to lose out on any opportunities. I mean, especially in the performance industry, this is something that you don't want to expose, because they don't want to be liable of anything that happens to you. So, as a result of those things happening in my career, where they moved on to other people, and some of them that still wanted to stay with me, I met someone who was he was a manager of a modeling agency. He asked me if I ever modeled, and modeling was something my mom, she would never agree to me. For her, in her mind, it was out of the question. So it was something I've never actually touched on before. He told me, like, you have a lot of potential. I see it. And through him, I decided, you know what, why not? What do I have to lose? Test shots for me. And in those test shots, I was able to see different sides of myself that I've never seen before. Was that it's interesting that he would even say I can be a model, because keep in mind, after doing this cleanse, it sculpted my body so I looked very thin, like as a model would, right? But again, as this is going on, I am in extreme pain. I remember even going on certain shoots and going on certain sites and just thinking to myself, whoa, how am I going to stand on top of this table when I feel like my stomach is about to explode? I didn't know what was going on. And this is what was happening in New York. I actually began to be afraid. I was afraid to go to the doctor because I was afraid of what the doctor would say to me. So I was like, I just have to ignore it. I can fight this, whatever it is. And as a result, I was trying to seek out different forms of healing. One of which was someone who is my former artistic director of an African dance company. Her name is Fumilayo, and she has a company called Fuchsia Dance. And in this company, she, in addition to leading the company, she's also a nutritionist. So when I finally joined the company, I had exposed to her the pain that I was going through. And so she connected me with people that were going through similar circumstances. My boss at the time, my boss of that introduced me to teaching in public high school. She had forced me to actually go to the ER room to see what was going on. And I remember it because it was during a rehearsal of the kids that we had. Her name is Elise Stone. She's amazing. She's one of the founders of the Phoenix Theater Ensemble out here in New York. And we were having a rehearsal for a performance that our kids were going to have. And at this theater called the Wow Project. And I was in so much pain. I remember not being able to move at this rehearsal that the kids were having. I was backstage. And so I finally told her, I said, I'm in so much pain. And she said, oh my God, Aeisha, why would you not say anything about this? So she sent me in a cab to go to NYU Hospital. And I went there. They got me to the ER really fast. And that's when they kept me for like 2 weeks in the hospital, and they did all these tests, and that's when they diagnosed me with the seemed to be Crohn's disease. And they connected me with one of the best doctors, and she was at Bellevue Hospital. She was a gastroenterologist, very knowledgeable, very well esteemed in her field. And so I went over there to her, and pretty much she told me the things that I would have to do. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm 22 years old, and she's 23, going on 23, and she's telling a young girl the things that she would have to do for a disease, one of which was an IV infusion. That was so terrifying to me. It's a process called Remicade. It was so terrifying. I completely neglected it. And then the other things were pills. And I was like, okay, I can handle a pill. Okay. But I didn't understand how far along this disease had gone at the time. So I was like, oh, I should be fine with the pill. I was also introduced because, mind you, I'm just taking in any form of healing at that time. I also was acquainted with the Rock Church at this time. And I met the Rock Church because I was auditioning for different shows. And at this time, I was auditioning for Beauty and the Beast. And at this audition studio called Pro Studios. And I went there, and that's when I met the first person of the Rock Church, who happened to be a model. And she was telling me a church, an audition studio. And I was like, there's a church here? This is audition studio. But anyway, so I'm in line for the audition, and someone comes over and she prays for me, and she happened to be a dancer, and she had purple hair. And I thought that was so interesting. I was like, wow, a girl with purple hair at this church. Make a long story short, after the audition, I make the decision to actually go to the church. And it's a church that's based on the performing arts and it's full of different artists. And so when I went there, I thought maybe that it was a meeting for artists, but it was actually a church. So I had networked with them and formed a sense of community, but I wasn't like going every single Sunday. In fact, I was in such search for this healing that I was going to different avenues. Another avenue that I pursued was it was a certain type of diet, and it was through another doctor. He was like a diet doctor. I don't know the exact term to call him, but he was some other type of doctor, and he gave me like this regimen to do, and I was trying to do this regimen. Meanwhile, as I'm doing this regimen, different side effects that my doctor was telling me what happened to me. What happened? The first thing was, of course, the extreme weight loss. That was one of the biggest things that were happening. A lot of people that I met in New York, they knew me as this like sculpted thin person, so of course they didn't think anything was wrong. People that were from back home in Michigan, they noticed it. If I posted something on social media, people were like, girl, what's going on? Like, you're losing weight. Is everything okay? Like, I even had someone straight up on Instagram just say, whoa, Aeisha, you lost so much weight. Is everything okay? Is everything okay with your health? And I had to kind of reach out to them and say, can you please not, like, write that on social media? But anyway, that was the first thing, was the weight loss. The second thing was the loss of appetite. And so this particular year, also, I had a family reunion to go to in Atlanta, Georgia. And I went there, and I knew that I was really, really sick. And you could see it because I was really, really small. And so I went to the family reunion, and my family, they saw me, and they were like, oh, my God, what is going on? Like, my aunt, I remember my Auntie Ann, she saw me, and she was like, Aeisha, you look like you're in a lot of pain. And I was. And so my dad, I remember he was terrified. He didn't know what to do. And then after the family reunion, I remember, and I made the choice to drive with my dad from Atlanta to Michigan. I don't know if you know, but it is a 12-hour drive. That was like the worst drive imaginable. Talking about being in such gut-throbbing pain, driving from Atlanta to Michigan. That's a 12-hour drive. But anyway, I drove to Michigan, and I was reunited with my mom. And my mom told me that she had a dream that I was going to come to her very ill and very sick. And that's exactly what I was. Very ill. I looked like, not even kidding you, I was almost as thin as, I would be compared to a Jewish person during the Holocaust. Like, not even exaggerating. That's how bony thin I was. And anyway, my mom came with me, and then we reunited and went to Ocean City, Maryland to be with my aunt. And this was an annual trip that we would take around my mom's birthday. So this was like in July, in the summertime. And then my mom came with me and went with me to Michigan. No, excuse me, she went with me to New York. And at that time, I had an appointment because the thing was, I had to give my doctor, the gastroenterologist, I had to give her a decision. It was either I was going to do this IV infusion stuff, or I was going to continue on this regimen that this other doctor was giving me. He needed to know. I had to make a choice. And the thing was, my mom, she was going to come with me, and everyone was like, listen, Aeisha, don't do that regimen thing. You need to do this IV thing because it's what's going to help you. And the thing about the IV infusion, which is called Remicade, it would be the thing that would treat whatever it was that I was going through. But mind you, at the time when I didn't want to do it, I didn't realize that I was that far along. I just knew I was in a lot of excruciating pain. And honestly, I don't think the doctor knew I was either, because physically I looked okay. But at this point, I didn't. And so my mom was like, listen, I'm going to go with you, and you're going to tell this doctor that you're going to do this treatment. So we get to New York. We're in the apartment that I was staying in with my cousin's mom. And I just remember being in so much pain that I felt like I was going under. In fact, even before I went to the family reunion, I was bedbound. I was in so much pain that it hurt to even walk out in the streets of New York. Like, throbbing pain. I would just be bedbound. But anyway, my mom, she came with me, and I remember we were in that room that I was staying in, and I remember I leaned back, And then I leaned forward, and when I leaned back, I heard a voice that said, if you don't go, you may die. And so I leaned and I looked at my mom, and I said, Mom, I can't take it anymore. We need to go to the hospital now. When I tell you my mom moved so fast, and she had like packed a book bag, you know, like with all my stuff in it. So she like grabbed extra stuff, and she like put me on her back because I was in that much pain I couldn't move. And we're like rushing to get to a cab to get to the ER room. So I get to Bellevue Hospital, and I get to the emergency room. My name is Aeisha Reese, and I'm a miracle.